screen. So
Okay.
cool. All right.
Let's just put this up.
Yeah, we're live. We are
Sweet.
live, my friend. How's it going? It's been
Not bad,
long.
not bad. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's been a long time since. Actually, hold on. I don't know if we're live yet. It says
Oh,
20 seconds. It's
uh,
always. You know what? I need to have a better way to figure that out.
I don't, yeah.
We might get live in 10 seconds. That's what
Oh,
I was
okay.
saying. Oh, no, we are live. Awesome.
Relax.
Anyways, always that confusion. Always. Dude, yeah, it's been like what, 2 years since I last have seen you. Like, fucking time is flying.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like 2 years ago. I was gonna say, wasn't it last year that we were working on Civil War?
No, it was 2000 what? 2000, gosh,
Oh,
2015, like end of 2015.
I guess so.
No,
The movie came out last year, right? Yeah. Yeah,
um
2015.
yeah, year and a half.
Yep, yep.
Holy shit. No, no. Actually, wait. No, it was 2 years. It was two
Oh,
years
really?
ago. Yeah, yeah. Because I remember when I was working with you guys. Uh, my daughter was still not born, so I can remember it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Wow.
gosh, there was this article I've read that the older you get, and that was what you were saying just moments
Yeah.
ago before we went live. Is like the older you get, the faster is time flying. I think it's true.
Yeah, it shouldn't work out that way, but I guess it does. Guess it does.
Oh my god. All right, so for anyone who's joining us today, I'm pretty sure majority of the people that are watching this already know who you are. You've been one of the most requested person for the stream, actually.
Oh, wow.
Funnily enough. So it's so glad. I know you're busy, and I know how much work you have to do and whatnot. So I'm really stoked to have you on. Um, and I'm pretty sure everyone else who's watching this, they're like, hell yes, yes, Andy is
Hey,
here.
I'm totally honored to be here.
Awesome, dude.
Thanks for having me.
So for anyone like, I like to start it with the very sort of traditional interview kind of style where I'll let my guest to introduce himself, and if some people might be joining and like, who is that guy? Maybe let's just briefly introduce you, who you are, and who is Andy Park all about.
All right. Yeah, no problem. My name's Andy Park. I'm a concept artist in the film industry. Currently, I'm working at Marvel Studios, and I'm the visual development supervisor over there. And yeah, I've been working as a artist, illustrator slash concept artist for the past 20 plus years. I started off my career drawing comic books back in the 90s for Image Comics, and then made the transition to video games, doing concept art for Sony for the God of War series, and
Oh,
for the
that's right.
past yeah, and then for the past almost 7 years, I've been at Marvel Studios working on all their films. So that's a very quick
Quick
intro.
rundown. Who you
Yeah,
are? Awesome.
yeah,
7 years in at Marvel. Wow,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
been
This
yeah,
this
it's a lot of
this
time.
May will be 7 years. Yeah, it seems like it was yesterday, but I can't believe it's 7 years. It's the longest I've ever been at any one company, but it's been a ride.
And it's 20 years working. Damn, that's a lot of time. I've joined the whole train of being an artist. The entertainment industry. What, 13 years ago? Maybe 13 years ago.
Oh,
So
nice.
you had some legwork
Yeah,
before
I
me.
started
So
off early when I was 19 years old, so I had a little head start.
nice, nice. So I'm curious because like I like to ask this question quite a lot to pretty much any guest that I have. Is it's like also like a good starter. It seems to be also a most frequently asked question too, which is um, you know, what got you into being in the industry? But because like everyone's story is kind of different. I
Yeah.
just had this morning a conversation with Bruce Straley, who's game director, co-director of Uncharted series, and he's the game director over at Naughty Dog. And
Awesome.
um, and it was like really interesting to hear that he didn't have like the defining moment. He kind
Yeah.
of walked into a company hoping to get a job, and that's how it started for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't like even like, oh, I just need a job. It wasn't like even, I want to be a game designer or anything like, oh, games are cool and they're looking. I'll ask them, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
Um, I had like my defining moment. I was wondering if you had like something that happened, maybe something that you saw in your life that was like, yeah, I want to be an artist. I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, you can hear me all right, right?
Yeah, of
Make
course.
sure my mic is okay.
Maybe we can
For,
cycle some images instead of the
uh,
Skype screen.
I know. Yeah. Let me just put this up. Oh, what is this little thing here?
Yeah, before we start, someone's asked if you're gonna do a demo. I didn't. Yeah, it's no
Ah,
demo. No demo today, guys. No
sorry.
demo.
Sorry.
Maybe another time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, defining moment, right? Well, for me, the defining moment, it wasn't that. It probably was during my junior high school years, during my adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the early '90s, um, late '80s, early '90s. Oh, I'm not a young one, but it's when I went into a comic book store. I think for a lot of concept artists, they say, "Oh, is when I watched Star Wars." That's the typical answer, right? Mine is comic books. When I went into my first comic book store, and I saw the cover to Iron Man number 200, and from that point on, because I've always drawn, but once I saw a comic book on the shelf, I just kind of fell in love with that medium, and I just became an avid collector after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would read the stories. I started getting to know who the artists were, not personally, just like by the art, and I started following artists based on their work, and I was following guys like Mark Bright, John Byrne, yeah, and then Alan Davis, and then very soon, like the guys that got really popular were like Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, like those guys, and then eventually they formed, and I followed everything that they did, and then around that time, if you're familiar, they formed Image Comics,
Mm-hmm.
and those were the heydays of comics where it got really really popular, and they were like rock stars, and they would do signings and convention appearances, and they even had like a whole Image Con, in San Diego, and I just remember during those years, those were my high school years, that I just like dreamt of one day drawing comics, because that's just, yeah, I fell in love with that medium and that the storytelling aspect, and just the idea of drawing for a living was something I didn't know if I was capable of doing,
Mm-hmm.
but it was something that, like, just like if a kid plays music, they're like, oh, I'd love to be a musician, but most people don't actually become a musician. But it was one of those things, like I dream of it, but I don't know if I will ever become good enough.
Right.
But
Right.
oh yeah, for me it was comics. I mean, back then there was no such thing as concept art. Well, I guess there were concept artists, but it was essentially not a legitimate job yet. You have like Ralph McQuarrie and guys like that, but it's not like it was actually a job title yet. I don't even know what his job title was back then. Do you know what Ralph McQuarrie's was? He actually considered a concept artist back then, or what did they call him? Just probably an artist.
Um, yeah, I think he was just illustrator. Like
Just illustrated, yeah.
yeah.
I don't think they had that. They didn't coin that term yet. So yeah, for me it was all about comics. I wanted to get into comics. Eventually, yeah, in my sophomore year, and when I was going to UCLA, I actually got hired by Rob Liefeld to work at his Extreme Studios, which was his division of Image Comics. Yeah, and it was earlier than I expected because I was just a sophomore in college. I was expecting to graduate college and then pursue
Right.
a career. But yeah, it kind of came earlier than I expected. So as a 19-year-old, if Rob Liefeld, an Image founder, asks you to join a studio, I'm not gonna say no, right? I'm gonna
Of
jump at.
course. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not complaining. Something
yeah,
I
yeah,
dreamt of doing. I'm totally
yeah.
down to do
Seriously.
that.
Yep, yep. And this is the
For
guy who
sure.
created Deadpool. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
not at
There
that
you
time.
go.
Did he? I guess he created. Did he? Yeah, I guess he created them already by that time. But
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, I worked in comics. I did that for a couple years, and then I wanted to actually get an art education because I felt like I wanted to learn more about art, not
Mhm.
just drawing with a pencil and drawing comic book character, or just with line art. I wanted to learn how to paint, about color, composition, all that design. So I actually took a hiatus from my career and I applied to Art Center in Pasadena. So I went to Art Center as an illustrator, and I did that for with all the intentions of graduating again. But then when I went there for 5 terms, and I had one more year left to go. But that's when I got a call from Matt Hawkins, who worked over at Top Cow, which is Mark Silvestri's studio,
Mhm.
to work on a new series based on Tomb Raider, the video game. And it was another one of those opportunities where I'm like, ah, damn it! Like I wanted to graduate. And I was thinking about possibly going to animation because I love animation as well, like feature animation. Um, but I had to jump at that chance, so I left school again, I dropped out again, and I went and I drew Tomb Raider, the comic, and I drew that for about 20 issues.
Yeah.
And then I think it was around that time. It was all during that time, like the internet was, blowing up, and more artists you're discovering online. I think around that time is when like conceptart.org was getting bigger, and it was the site to like view every day and go to like the it's finally finished section of the forum.
Haha, yeah, I remember that.
and then you click through those and just get totally intimidated.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was like, fuck. Like I need to do more work. Like
yeah,
this
yeah.
is embarrassing. What am I
No,
doing here?
it was inspiring because like at that time, again, like I went to art center at that point, so I learned the basics of painting and everything, but I had no experience in digital painting because they didn't teach that at art center at that time. It was all just like traditional, like oils, acrylics, watercolor,
Yeah.
charcoal stuff. So I kind of knew, like, you know what, I want to do that. Like I love to I love to paint, I love to design, I love comics as well, but one of the main things I didn't enjoy about being a comic book artist was just drawing with a pencil all the time. Like
Hmm.
I never got to like color my own work. I never got to paint my own work. Um, so when I saw what the concept art field and the artists were producing, I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's exactly what I want to
That
do.
looks fun.
Yeah, seriously, right? It's like it just looked amazing because you get to paint, but you don't have to like bust out like oils and all clean up and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that required me to build up my own portfolio again, right? So I built up a portfolio. I took a class over at Noman. It was a character design class taught by Kevin Chen and Anthony Francisco at the time. And that was a big chunk of my portfolio that I built during those 10 weeks. And at the end of that class, we had a gallery show at Gallery Nucleus, and Kevin and Anthony invited a lot of their industry friends. And that's where I met Charlie Wen. He was there at our gallery show, and he was telling me about that. He worked at Sony at the time. He was the visual development director,
Right.
and he said that they're looking for an artist for their God of War game. So yeah, so I was like, oh yes, I was totally interested. The funny thing is, after I left that gallery and I talked to my friend who was working at Blizzard, because I'm not a gamer. I'm still not a gamer.
Right.
Especially at that time, I knew nothing about games. So I actually like went up to my friend and was like, "Hey, I got an offer for an interview from this one guy. Like, he works at Sony. Have you heard of a game called God of War? And then he told me like,
slapped you in the face.
yeah,
Get outta here.
it won Game of the Year, and I was like, oh, that's good.
Is
So I'm
that
going
good?
to.
Game of the year? I think it's.
I know.
Right?
Yeah, but I never heard of it, so I was like, oh, I was very fortunate to like, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
get into a game studio that was highly coveted, I guess. But yeah, I applied to Sony. I got the job there, and that was my first concept art job game. Concept art job.
Nice.
You know, working
So
on God of War.
you went from
Yeah.
comics to basically concept. That's awesome. That's pretty awesome. For me,
Yeah.
comic books is such an alien world. You know, I've tried doing my own comic, but it's like I get lost in the minutia of, you know, storytelling, because like literally if you're doing a comic book, you're sort of like a one-man orchestra, you know. I mean,
Yeah. You're the director. You're the set dresser. You're the designer,
yeah,
storyboard artist. Like I don't do comics anymore, but I have the utmost respect for comic book artists, and I don't think comic book artists get the respect that they deserve, because it's so easy for people just to like make fun of. They go to a comic book store and they look at the artwork and they're like, oh, this looks no good. Like I've learned, like, dude, those guys who do comics, like, those are some of the best draftsmen. Not all of them know how to like paint and draw digitally or paint digitally, that kind of stuff, but they're draftsmen, and their storytelling abilities and just their acting, what they could do with the characters. I mean, it's I think I would almost say like most concept artists wouldn't be able to do what they're doing,
yeah.
So it's pretty awesome. And then, and I saw the stuff that you're doing, and it's like, oh my gosh, like you should totally do a comic. Like, that stuff is awesome. Your kind of anime flavor, drawings that you do.
Everyone is telling me this, and I when I like sit in front of my computer and look at it, it's like, oh my god, this story sucks. Oh my god, this is stupid. Oh my god, how am I supposed to even finish that one page? Like, and start yelling at myself. It's
Yes.
just like it's a completely different realm, and it can be overwhelming. It's kind of goes to say with whatever. When you're learning new things, you're pretty much, an amateur. And, even though you could argue like, hey, comic books are about art, sure. But like, as you said, you're a director, set designer, you're a storyteller, you're an actor, you're a voiceover, like everything. And you have to write a dialogue that makes sense. It doesn't sound like written by a 5-year-old, It's just, there's so many layers to it. And of course, like some of the bigger titles will have like a writer, and then someone else will do coloring versus someone will do inks and whatnot. That's obvious, but there's always like one person behind it all, sort of like almost directing how things are going. And for me, it's just like, it's overwhelming. It's a lot of work too. Like, it's way more than I thought it will be when I first like, I'm gonna do a comic book, and like,
So are you doing everything? You're writing it and illustrating it and everything?
that's what I was trying to do, and then I realized how much work it is. I was like, fuck.
Yeah,
I don't have time for this.
Exactly. I think I wanted to do that too, but it's the hardest thing to do, to write and illustrate. It's like, geez.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
Yeah.
I can agree with. I mean, there's something delicious about being a concept artist, even with everything everything good and bad that it has to do. You have to deal with as a concept artist.
Yeah.
Dealing with people and especially like, I mean, you've been working in games for a while, so how politics works in games. Like working with designers and level designers and whatnot. Like, what was your experience in games? How many years you've been at Sony?
I was at Sony for 5 years.
That's long enough to have like a formed opinion, I would say.
Yeah. That was great, because working on God of War 2, then God of War 3, and then God of War Ascension. I mean, especially God of War 3, working on that was such a learning experience. But I mean, I love I've loved working in games.
Hmm.
I totally I see games. I don't play them per se, but I watch the trailers. I watch people play it here and there, and I love the artistry and just the creativity that goes into making games.
Yeah.
And working on a game like God of War, like that's just it's like playing in a sandbox or just if you're like a kid because I get especially for characters I getting to design creatures and crazy mythological classical characters. So because that was mainly my job, so just create
Yeah.
characters and creatures. But yeah, I don't know. I really liked working at Sony. I mean, so much of it. I think a lot of people always talk about. They hate the politics, but a lot of the reason why you'll stay at a place a lot of times is because of your coworkers, because of the people you're working with.
Yeah, of
And
course.
and for me, that was definitely the case because I mean, I was working with guys that just I'm still friends with, and they're great guys like Charlie and Scott Cito and Eric San Juan and Cecil Kim and Dwayne Turner, and that's where I also met Ryan Meinerding. Um, yeah, and then that was like the first what's it called, first phase, and then a lot of those guys left, and then I continued working with Cecil Kim, and then Jung Park came in, and Izzy Madrano and Andrew Kim.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I
and
know all those names.
yeah. I'm probably missing some people. I'm sorry, but
That's all right.
but working with these guys, it was just that's what made it so fun because not only are we hanging out, we're going to lunch every day, but it's also like these are artists I respect, and I'm all throughout. I feel like ever since I went to concept art, like I've grown more than I've ever grown in my whole artistic life. I think a lot of it because as a comic book artist, you're working at home for the most part,
Right.
but then when I'm working in video games as a concept artist, I'm in the studio, 5 days a week, and everyone has their own strengths, their own styles. I'm, watching. I was sitting next to Charlie for years, and I would just turn my chair around and just watch him without him knowing, with my jaw, on the floor, But
Yeah,
the
Charlie
amount
can impress you like that for sure.
the amount that you can learn just by working with people, as it's just you can't beat that. You can't. It's better than school.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, most of the experiences that you get as an artist is when you actually work with people rather than
Yep.
school. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can get a lot out of the school.
Yeah.
I've
Well, of
never been to
course.
college. I've been in a college for a year or even less than that to become an electrician, and I dropped out because I thought it was bullshit. And I think I got like my first freelance job that was getting like $15 an image. I was like, fuck yeah, like
Oh
I
yeah,
quit
totally.
today.
Totally.
um, but yeah, it's like once you work with those people, it's just like, especially when you have a great team, like the names you've mentioned, like Charlie and Jung and Easy, all of those guys, Eric, like all of those guys. I remember I was still back at Crytek, and I was just so jealous. Like, fuck, those guys are making like the most juicy stuff ever. And
Yeah.
and I remember when I finally came here, I got to start meeting with you guys, whether it was lunch or
Oh yeah.
events or anything like that. It was just
Party
like,
house. Yep.
it's very inspiring. I can agree. Like when you, because like last year and a half for me is basically working from home.
Oh really?
Yeah, yeah. I've been
Oh
not in the studio at all, and I kind of enjoy it because like no traffic, and you
yeah,
know
yeah,
how
yeah.
405 and 101 are in LA.
Oh yeah.
It's like I used to call it a devil's butthole,
Oh
because
yeah.
it's just a one big nightmare.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, it's just like the commute can kill you for sure, and working from home, just like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I don't need to go to a studio. I can sit without pants or do whatever the hell I want and sort of like
Yeah.
control my time. But
Yeah.
I can absolutely agree that when you're in the studio environment, especially when you're with like-minded prolific people, you'll learn a lot from them.
Yep. Yep.
um,
Totally.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, politics. I guess like it depends. You know, I used to have a different view on it. I'm pretty sure you have your own view, but I
Uh-huh.
feel like politics also teach you how to interact with difficult humans. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's definitely an art, and you have you kind of have to. You're in a studio environment.
Yeah,
You're going to be around politics, and you're going to have to be in situations where you're not happy with the situation, but you have to learn to navigate it. You
yeah,
know, because
yeah.
you're all part of a team. You know, that's at the end of the day, you're working in a studio. You're a team member, and I think the challenge for an artist so much is about like I think so many times we do the concept art and we're just like we want it to look like this what we designed because
Yeah, has to be
we
one
didn't.
on like 1-to-1 translation.
I
Otherwise, it's
know.
not gonna.
But at the end of the day, it's not about serving us or serving our concept art. We're serving the bigger picture, the project, and whether that's the director's vision or whoever. But yeah, I think it requires a lot of that, a lot of like ego checks, a lot of like teamwork, a lot of collaboration.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, definitely, and the film is no different. I mean,
No, well, it's different because you deal with like way less people, but some of them can be much stronger characters in a way.
well, I think as a because ever since I became a supervisor at Marvel, like I'm dealing with more people than I've ever dealt with ever in my career.
Right, that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, so there's definitely more than I've ever encountered. Because I think before, as a concept artist, I'm just dealing with concept artists and occasionally the director, right? And
Yeah,
then and in video games, you also deal with like level designers and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, you're kind of like isolated in your own concept art world.
true.
But yeah, I think ever since I became a supervisor, I'm dealing with all the departments, I guess, from mainly like costumes and the production designer and the VFX supervisor and the producers, of course, and the director.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Which of
there's a
them
lot.
you like working with the most? Like if you would have to pick only one person to work with from the entire production pipeline, like what do you think would be the easiest?
Oh,
I mean,
that's
it all
interesting.
depends on characters, obviously. I've seen directors that are easy to deal with, and there are directors that are impossible to deal with, and
Yeah, yeah.
um,
That's the interesting part because like every movie has a different director, so it's like one experience could be like, oh, that was so smooth and everything, we were so in sync, and then the next one just like, oh, I can't find what this guy wants. What does he
right.
want? So um, yeah, it is fun. I do enjoy working with directors, um, but yeah, some are harder, easier than others, I guess, or you're just more in sync with, or
Yeah.
yeah, or it depends on the personalities too, because some directors are more like I don't know if it's introverted or what, or they only want to deal with certain people. They don't
Hmm.
want to they want to deal with as little people as possible.
Yeah, that
Um,
happens. That happens a lot too. I've noticed.
yeah, versus others are more like I'm happy to talk to every concept artist in the art department,
Yeah,
and the others like I only want to talk to the production designer.
I've noticed that the directors that usually are very visual driven, like visuals driven, they will be
Yeah.
almost hands on.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I
So totally.
agree.
Usually directors love the concept artists, because that's the department where they can dream and they can like envision and see their
Yeah.
their vision come to life. And then they'll complain how after it passes the concept phase is when their dreams start dying down and getting slashed because of budgets, because of
When
reality.
producers come in and
Yeah,
like, you cannot do this. Like,
yep, that's impossible.
fuck.
Yep. And
Yeah.
in some ways, that's why video games is the one advantage over video games. Like you can kind of do anything, and there's not the same kind of constraints as a live action movie, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Budgets can be more. Well, some of them can be more forgiving, where others can be more restrictive.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
One thing that you could say about the film is it's very compact. Like there's no room, no wiggle room for like, I don't know what I'm gonna do yet, so let's have some, development. Like it doesn't work that way. It's like go
Yeah.
go go go. Let's figure this out right now. And yeah.
Yep.
So how is like I'm curious because when I met you and when we were working together on Cap America on the Civil War,
Hmm.
you were still illustrator, right? At
Yeah. On
Marvel.
that one, I became lead character concept artist on
Mm-hmm.
that one. And that was essentially like my training ground,
Yeah.
because I think because before that, it is very much like, and you probably experienced this, like it's not you as a concept artist in film. Usually, you don't get to go to like the meetings. You don't get to interact with the director. I'm
Yeah.
not every film. There's some films where they interact with the concept artist, but I feel like
Yeah.
in
Mostly you
my,
deal with production designer.
yeah,
In most
and
cases,
then
or art director. Yeah.
yeah, in my case, I work in the visual development department, so I'm dealing with Ryan Meinerding, and when Charlie was there, with Charlie, and then I don't have interactions with anyone else, like not the director, not the production designer, not Kevin Feige, not no one from
Mm-hmm.
Marvel. But on Captain America: Civil War, when I became lead, I started having more interactions. I would go to the meetings, so I'd have FaceTime with the Russo brothers and all the other heads of the department, and then I started getting involved in the costume department, where I would kind of kind of check in on, like, we would collaborate essentially. It's a
Yeah.
collaboration of coming up with a digital design for a costume, and then like for the Ant-Man, and then I would be actively kind of seeing what they do and then making notes, or they would ask me questions or I would ask them questions, and then also dealing with legacy, like going to legacy and checking out progress on that,
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of material is that helmet going to be made of, so going through different swatches. And so yeah, I started becoming heavily involved in kind of like
That's cool.
a lot of it, so which was really fun.
More hands on, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was less time to like design,
Mm-hmm.
but then after Civil War, that's when I became a supervisor, and then I started. So the way it works is at Marvel Studios is in our visual development department. Ryan Meinerding is the head of visual development. I'm this visual development supervisor, and we have so many movies going at the same time. Me and Ryan, we split leading our movies.
Mm-hmm.
So usually there's always at least like four going at the same time. So he'll lead the team on two movies, and then I'll be leading the team on two other movies. So my first one was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Oh, that's
So
cool. That's coming out soon, huh?
yeah, so I'm excited because that was the first one where I led that completely. Um, the training wheels were off. I didn't have Ryan to, you know,
I wonder
to
how it is to work with James, James Gunn.
James
I've never
is
met him.
he's awesome because he's just like a ball of energy. He's passionate. Have you ever heard like he does like live like Facebook and
Oh no,
uh,
I've never had a chance to work with him. When I was doing some help work for the first Guardians film, it was through MPC, which
oh
is basically VFX. So you're
yeah,
very disconnected.
yeah. No, James is awesome. I mean, he's so passionate. Like, yeah, and he has a love for this character, and it's so apparent. Like these are his children that he created.
I
So
can.
he was the perfect guy
Oh yeah,
to
absolutely.
yeah.
When I first heard that he's going to direct
Hmm.
Guardians, I was like, I think that movie is gonna be awesome. And the
Yeah, yeah.
reason is because I remember, like, oh gosh, it was like 2000, it was 2007 when YouTube was just about showing up. Like the first time YouTube was
Oh,
available, or maybe it was 2005
yeah.
where YouTube showed up.
Hmm.
And I remember seeing those videos that he recorded, which was called PG porn.
Oh, yeah,
It was
yeah,
just like it was the funniest shit,
yeah.
back
Actually,
then
never
at
saw.
least. And I kind of remembered that. I was like, knowing the comic books, he probably going to make the justice, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't disappointed for sure.
Yep, yep. He's definitely got that quirky sensibility. Or his other movies were that oh gosh, that Rainn Wilson one. I forgot what that was called. It was kind of a dark comedy one. But yeah, the ones that and then he did Sliver. But
Hmm.
yeah, he's really great. He's fun to work with. He knows what he wants, and he's pretty straightforward.
I
But
wonder.
but of course, working on Guardians was like a tough one because it's so different from the
Oh
rest of
yeah,
the MCU that one was a challenge to try to find that look. And also because it was such an obscure property, like no, I grew up reading comics. I never read a Guardians of the Galaxy comic ever.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. It's one of those like, wait, what?
no. I remember when Kevin Feige told us that because it was right after the success of Avengers,
Hmm.
and then we're like, okay, what are we going to work on next? And he said, Guardians of the Galaxy. Like all of us were like, what the heck? Like I know what it was. Like I know there's some tree, and I know there was like a raccoon, a talking raccoon, and I was just like, are you serious? Like, and that's what I respect so much about Kevin, because I feel like any other studio, you have a success like Avengers, you're just gonna milk that property like crazy, and everything's gonna be Iron Man and only Avengers like from then on. But Kevin had a bigger vision of like, hey, we need to open it up to beyond just what we already know is successful. But it was a big risk, because if Guardians failed, like it would hurt even the success of
Yeah,
what we did with Avengers.
in a way, because the franchise, just the comic books, they weren't the most popular thing.
No, not at all.
And in a way, you could almost treat it as semi, original IP, if you will. Even
Oh
though
yeah.
it's based obviously on existing franchise, it was just such a small thing
Yep. Yep.
that in the Hollywood or in the film perspective, it's you could consider it as a original IP. I remember I had conversation with Danny, and
Hmm.
he said like, yeah, this is an important movie to not fail, basically. So it went really well.
Yeah.
The reception wasn't it like the one of the best selling Marvel
Yeah.
movies for a while?
I mean, Avengers came before that, so they can't top Avengers because that was like, you know, at that time it was the third highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
But this one, was totally a surprise hit, and
Hmm.
I mean, all of us were thinking this is going to be our first flop. Like, oh no! But when we went to the premiere and we watched it, we are just like, oh my gosh, wow! Like they pulled it off.
So
So
it seems to me like right now, in the supervisor position, you get to be quite a lot on the set, isn't it?
yeah, when they're around, because usually most of our films are remote. So
Right.
in the past they were in London. These days they're in Atlanta. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Thor Ragnarok was in Australia. But yeah, I've been on set. I went to the set on Civil War,
Hmm.
um, and Captain America: Winter Soldier. I went to some reshoots on Avengers, um, Age of Ultron. Yeah, so I've been on the set like a handful of times, and yeah, it's pretty cool to watch it happen. Like I was there in Atlanta during the Civil War scene where they're facing off and fighting each other in the airport,
Hmm.
like the face off and them running at each other. So I remember watching that live, and I was just like, I was that kid again in high school, and I was
How
like,
how
holy
freaking
cow.
crazy it is! Like, when you see it in the film, it's like, yeah, I get a lot is going on, but
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
all a majority of them of those things you see on a screen, it's like usually they prepare a set, they
yeah.
film what about a minute a day,
Oh
if,
yeah,
if
yeah, no,
that. So
yeah.
when you're on the set, it's really they're just doing one or two scenes tops, right?
Well,
But
actually, on that day, because they have to shoot these relatively fast,
mhm.
so there's even a second unit going on at the same time.
Oh yeah, that's always Yeah, that's always the case.
Yeah, so there was actually quite a few scenes because I was only there for that one day, and they did shoot. They shot the scenes with them running at each other. They shot a handful of them individual fighting scenes between Hawkeye and Black Widow, and then Black Panther versus Winter Soldier, and then a lot of the Ant-Man turning into Giant Man. They filmed a lot of that stuff in one day that I was there.
That's
So
interesting.
I was kind of surprised. I was like, I think a lot of it's because of the weather. Because I heard that the day before I got there, it was like downpour and it was like flooding almost.
Right.
So they had to shut everything down. So because the weather was nice on that day, they had to they're scrambling to also make up for the day before. So
Yeah, makes sense.
it's a logistical nightmare. I don't know, for them to even pull these things off, and then you have all the actors and all their needs. So it's pretty amazing what they can pull off.
Yeah, the actors and directors, like 1% of the crew that is on the set. That's so
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
You see all those assistants and people.
Oh yeah, totally.
And the guy who's just like there to yell at people, like, get the fuck out of the way, like, clear set,
Yeah.
everyone's quiet, like.
Yeah.
That's not the director usually who's doing that. It's always like this.
No.
Like this
Yeah.
drill sergeant almost.
Yeah.
Kind of guy that you don't want to cross.
No, I earn so much respect for the guys at Marvel and just movie makers and how they can pull these things off. Like it is a logistical nightmare, but
Yeah.
somehow able to pull it off.
I got like this and the like huge respect, regardless if the movie sucks or not. You know that.
Yeah,
I stopped
exactly.
caring whether the movie is a horrible movie or not.
Yeah.
Because just seeing that and then having an experience to organize a just amateur photo shoot.
Yeah.
And dealing with like renting a space and making sure you have camera and then making sure you have a backup camera if something goes wrong, and the tethering, and how you're gonna dress the set and your actor if they're all gonna be on time, like just like it was like 5-man crew.
Yeah.
I was doing like I was apprentice to Learn Squared's class for artistic photography.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was doing that the Blade Runner stuff.
Yeah,
but that
cool.
was like for me like, fuck, this is so intense,
Yeah.
And I felt I was hard. And then I went to see a set of and shooting one of the scenes of Ghost in the Shell. And I was just like, I just cannot believe what's going on, and that it's done.
Yeah.
And they wrap it up and they move on to something else and build like you come in the next day. It's like what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
Like, this is a completely different space,
And they're not shooting like consecutively, So it's like as a filmmaker, you're like,
yeah, it's all
how do you-
scattered. Yeah.
Yeah, and as an actor, as a filmmaker, like it's crazy that it's so technical, and yet they're trying to be creative at the same time.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's pretty amazing.
And when you said like they shot so many things in one day, like especially with the weather, like
Yeah,
you quickly,
exactly.
when you're on the set, you quickly realize like every minute is probably like $100,000 or something like that. Like just by the sheer amount of things that are going on.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, this must cost a lot of money. Like the camera or like this hot light that is right there in the corner, the big hot light in the corner.
Yeah.
That thing alone is like what, $50,000 or maybe $100,000. Like it's just like so insane.
Yep.
Yeah, it can be pretty intimidating to see it all live, and then like you get like a newfound appreciation to filmmaking. Like you get,
totally.
oh shit, yeah.
I can see why they want to film indoors most of the time, because it's just you can't control the weather, and indoors, you can control the lighting and just the weather and everything. So
I'm guessing your painting to meeting ratio changed a lot over the last year or two.
Yeah, there are many days actually where it's like 4:00 p.m. and I'm like, I haven't done one brushstroke yet. But what's hard about this job is, and Ryan and Charlie definitely they would tell me about it in the early years, just because they expect us to also be a concept artist,
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that it's just really challenging because I'm trying to do the same amount of painting, or trying to, as when I wasn't doing this, leading the films, but I'm trying to do both, so it's like I have to lead a group of artists as well, not to mention the meetings and the interactions with the other heads of the department.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to also paint, so it's been challenging the past like 2 years, and my family it's challenging, on them, because there's many weekends where I'm like, Daddy has to work, and then the guilt comes in, and
Yeah, tell me about it.
yeah.
Cool. Dude, let's jump to some questions. There's, I think, quite a few here. We'll brush through them and talk a little more, but I'm just gonna check quickly if I didn't miss any from the earlier in the stream. It will be much more easy for me if Andrew was here, but he decided that sandwiches are more important. So let's see. I think may I ask, what differences do you find on your mindset for comics and concept art? Sure. Hold on. Sure. There's any change of mindset, or what the difference you have found. So basically, shit, I'm pretty bad at reading today. What the hell? Yeah, I guess it's a question about your mindset and maybe obvious differences between working in comics versus working in concept art.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference in mindset, because in comics, as a penciler, you're thinking about storytelling. So you're thinking about shot for shot. So you're thinking about for a comic book artist, you're usually drawing one page a day, and one page usually consists of one panel to it can be as many panels, but usually average is like 6 panels per page.
Right.
So you have to tell the story cohesively. It's very much like a storyboard artist, but you're also thinking about the narrative of that page to the next page and the page before it. So, and then within each panel, you want there to be clarity, not to mention like just visually appealing. So it's a lot of thinking, a lot of work, and a lot of it usually took me like 12 to 15 hours to do one page. But you're and of course you're just drawing with a pencil, so you're drawing the same character in various poses, and you want it to flow so that the eye, the reader can read the comic book cohesively. In concept art, I'm usually dealing with one image, kind of like what you're seeing right now on the screen. I'm mainly thinking about the design of the character.
Yeah.
My job is mainly characters. What Mache, you're usually working in the art department, so you're usually working with like environments or like props, vehicles, props, and all that stuff. So as a character artist or designer, initially I'm thinking about the composition of the piece, the pose, anything that can help sell the character, who this character is. And then I'm thinking about the design of the actual character, like what are the materials, what are the design lines, what is the purpose of this character, what does the character do in the movie, so what will this character need, in order to tell that story.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a completely different mindset. I think a lot of times certain things can kind of overlap between the two, but it's pretty different.
What would you say would be the biggest difference if you compare character design in film and games?
Between video, I think most of the characters I'm designing are on real humans. There's times when we're designing like Ultron and Iron Man and certain characters that are creatures, and whenever we get to do those are like fun, because you can kind of you have a little bit more freedom. But with characters that that are going to wear costumes and helmets, like that Loki character or Black Widow or whatever character, it has to work because some costume designer is actually making this costume, and putting it on Scarlett Johansson. And so you can't just, design a character with, proportions that are, like eight heads tall or 9 heads tall. You have to actually do research on what Scarlett Johansson looks like. What do these, actors actually look like? Doing a lot of research on like actual costumes and materials, and like for Hawkeye, like we're looking at tactical gear. Like you're referencing a lot of real world things that people actually wear, because you want it to be believable and you actually want it to function. Of course, that the challenge is you want it to function, to look functional, and actually to be wearable, and the actor can move. But you also want it to be hyper real in that we are creating like a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also the materials, right? Like there's
Totally.
certain things, like when you're designing a costume, like what kind of material and where it's placed. Like you cannot put something around the joints that will not bend, and
Yep.
there's a lot of back and forth with costume designer, especially now when you work more in supervising. I'm guessing you work with those guys quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also in video games, like you can, there's plenty of video games out there where especially the more Asian video games, like the armor that they wear is like these crazy shoulder armors and these, things that would never work in real life. Like, but you don't have to think about that in video games. You just, the only requirement in video games is it has to look cool.
Yeah.
I remember them kind of saying that all the time in God of War. Is like it just has to look cool. Like it needs to be somewhat, believable. So it's not just like, oh, that's ridiculous, but you don't have to think about that much, But
I agree.
Obviously in film, that's all you're thinking about. Well, not all, but
yeah. I mean, on the games like, let's say, The Last of Us, where it's more grounded and realistic.
Yeah, that's more realistic. Yeah.
You still think about like the realism, but you're not really concerned about, say, like, hey, is the costume that I'm designing even gonna fit, in a way?
Yeah.
Or if the department's gonna have the right materials to actually create it. It's like, it's a T-shirt. It's gonna work.
Yeah, exactly.
Some ZBrush artist, some character artist is gonna make some marvelous designer magic and ZBrush, and it's gonna look cool. Like, I don't have to care if they're gonna be able to find the right materials and whatnot. So,
yep.
Yeah, I found that to be a biggest difference, especially it seems there are parallels between costume and art department as well, because when you're designing environments for games, you think about the gameplay and cover objects and AI paths and all that stuff, which is sort of somewhat limiting, but you still have a lot of sort of freedom to work with. Whereas when you're doing the set design work, when you're working with the set designers and production design, you're sort of constrained by the location that they will be using to shoot that specific scene. So you might end up having, all right, the dimensions of this space cannot exceed, this and that, and everything else is gonna be green screen. And here's sort of like the block mesh created by a set designer, and those items and those things have to be placed in exactly these places, because that's how they're gonna build it. Like there's no, for safety reasons, you cannot do this and this and that. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. I enjoy both of it. Video games and film. They're different requirements, but they are very similar also. But
another question was, what can I do when I draw, but what I draw doesn't look great? When I'm in the blog, what can I do when I feel like I lose my way in this? I guess it's kind of convoluted way of writing. Guys, more grammar. I'm joking. We have audience from around the world, and I'm pretty bad at English too, so I understand. But I guess it's like when you have the creative block, and when you're drawing, it feels like, this looks like shit.
Yeah.
Like how you what is your way of tackling this? It's actually a pretty popular question, honestly.
Yeah, I know, but I think even all professionals, we get to, we're doing a painting and then we just kind of are struggling. You know, I feel like I kind of almost feel like that with almost all my paintings, or I feel like there's a I'm working on it and the beginning's fine, and then in the middle I'm just like, oh, this is not working, or is this gonna work? It's kind of it's that kind of feeling, and there are times when you're genuinely struggling and you end up wasting time because you're just trying to fix something that's not working. And there have been even times when I'm like, the solution for me was to essentially give up on that painting and start again. And the funny thing is, usually when I do that and I start again, like immediately the new painting I'm doing is like, I've either solved it or I've saved myself hours of wasted time if I just continued on that old painting.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll do is that I'm constantly doing is very just practical thing. I'm constantly flipping the image. You know,
it's really helpful, isn't it?
Totally, because it's all about getting a new perspective. So I'll press. I set it to F5, and I just flip my image all the time. The other really good thing that I feel like most people don't do, or at least maybe more younger artists, maybe because they don't have access to it, is asking a friend or a peer, another artist. So, we'll do that all the time, where I'll just go up to I'll go to like Jackson or Rodney or Ryan or whoever, or Charlie back in the day, and just ask them to come over to my computer and say like, hey, what do you think? Like, I'm having a hard time, or I need fresh eyes. Because for me, I feel like when I look at a same painting, like let's say this painting for, whatever, 3 hours or 4 or 5 hours, I'm just like, I eventually become blind to it, and I kind of lose those fresh eyes. So I need somebody else to kind of like point out things, and I'm like, oh, and it opens up my eyes to things that I wasn't seeing. So yeah, I would say if you have access to that, is to ask a friend or a peer or someone that you trust artistically, not just like your mom or something. We'll just say it's great. I know she'll be like, that's amazing. And then you're like, cool, I'm not struggling.
It almost seems to me like it's a luxury to have that ability these days. I remember you've mentioned in the beginning, like conceptart.org. That was a perfect time to actually go in forums and have a conversation with artists. Like everyone was posting there, and if you were doing something interesting, you would catch an eye of a professional, and they would drop feedback too. Especially, I've noticed like there was some artists that were like really pushing it, like trying to get better and better and better. And you could see there were those threads, artist threads where like you could follow it, and then you would check in like a couple of months in, like later, it's like, holy shit, that guy is doing awesome now, And it's just this constant back and forth. I feel like today, it's all Facebook, it's all Twitter, and everything is just like snap, and quick, and nobody cares like how many likes. The only thing that most people care about is likes. Like, oh, how many likes I gonna get?
Yeah.
I'm not getting 1,000 likes. Shit, this is a bad concept.
I know times have changed, and I kind of miss the old days.
Yeah, I feel like signing up for online classes. Like if you cannot afford to go to places like Art Center, where you're definitely gonna have that feedback and you're gonna have a proper one. Signing up for online classes. I don't trust art schools in general, like especially state-funded art schools, because majority of people that work there, we had that conversation on this channel quite a few times, and you know how it is. Majority of the professors, or however they call themselves, they never worked in the industry. They don't know what the fuck they are talking about, and so I would never recommend for anyone to go to a place where your instructor like haven't been working in the industry, any industry, for at least like last 2 years, or 3 years. If 5 years, if it's a stretch,
I think the people who live like in Los Angeles or California, I think have a a big luxury because there's a lot of like
Very
schools,
lucky. Yeah.
a lot of schools where they're all taught by professionals. Like
Yeah.
your school and CDA and
Well, my
Brainstorm.
school is online, so you can be anywhere you want. You can
Yeah,
sign
yeah,
up,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the teachers we have we're trying to get best in the industry, obviously. But
yeah,
it's we're small. We just started like a year and a half ago, so it's like it's not gonna be enough, I would say,
uh-huh.
for you to have all the knowledge that you need to have.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you will be extremely lucky if you are in LA.
yeah,
Because LA is pretty much a hub for this, but it's also one of the most expensive places in America too. So
yeah, 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 yeah. But there's so many things online now. Some
yeah,
your schoolism. There's
yeah, schoolism is great. Bell
if you
Beach is
want to
great
learn,
too.
if you have the motivation, the will, and the time and the money,
Yep.
you can learn. Online. Like I wish I had this stuff back in the
I
day.
mentioned online schools and schools in general is because you're gonna have you're gonna have all the other students that you're gonna bond with. They're
Yeah,
gonna have the same goal as you are, which is getting better.
yeah,
And I'm pretty sure you're gonna meet people that have humongous egos and people that are shitty, but somewhere along the crowd, like in the crowd, you're gonna at least find one or two people that are good enough and interesting enough to have a conversation and learn from them and collaborate. Collaboration also brings a lot of that's what we're missing right now, that kind of the feedback. And
yeah,
also teachers, that the teachers that will eventually drop by and like, oh shit, this is awesome. Let's comment on that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Next question was, um, let's see. I'm gonna try to different person. B. How much time you can spend actively working on artworks, uh, respectively, to the increased time consuming communication as a supervisor. I think we kind of mentioned this. You're trying to do the same amount while being in meetings.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like I'm doing two jobs.
Hmm.
So I think I have to work more hours just to kind of catch up. Yeah, because during the day I am, dealing with a lot of the freelancers and the artists that
Hmm.
are on my team, and then then I have different meetings with the different departments,
Yeah.
and then I'm trying to paint as well. So and doing these paintings aren't fast. So
Yeah.
I do work weekends a lot.
Yeah, having meetings doesn't make it easier for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I actually enjoy. I know a lot of people. I actually enjoy like going to the meetings and interacting with all the different departments. So
Mhm.
I found that I actually really enjoy it. Because I love seeing just the movie making process
Yeah.
and I'm learning more and more and seeing what the VFX does. And I love going to the costume department and yeah, it's actually really fun. So, and
Yeah.
then even going to the meetings, a lot of times it's like there's an excitement to that, until they don't approve anything, and then it doesn't become exciting anymore. But
It's like fuck.
I know, but
Here
when
we
they
go
do,
again.
they do get excited about some of the artwork we do. Then it's like the best feeling.
Yeah. If you want to do character design, how much imagination involved into your artwork, or every idea you collect from the internet?
But wait,
Like, do
how
you
much?
could like how much?
Oh,
Yeah,
how
how
much is
much
imagination? How much is like
versus
reference?
reference? Yeah.
It's always going to be a combination of both. I think if anyone says like you shouldn't use reference, then I think they're fools. Because
Yeah.
I think, especially as a concept artist, I mean, even comic book artists, I think any artist, I think should use reference, and there
Of
shouldn't be
course.
this idea of like you should just magically come out of your head, because there's no such thing. Even the stuff that comes from your head, you were referencing something that you learned or saw before. You
Yeah.
might just not be looking at it in front of you. But if you want to expand yourself and go beyond what you know, and just like you can do in your sleep, then you have to reference and you have to explore. Because I think when I reference and when I do Google searches or go on Pinterest or whatever, or look at books, or um, I discover things all the time that I'm like, just 2 seconds or 1 minute ago, I would never have thought of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But seeing something that just opened up my whole mind, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that brings up an idea that this could happen, and this is why I'll do this design. And that's the joy of being a concept artist for me, because I'm learning. It's like an education, and I'm designing, and I'm being creative, using my imagination. That's the joy of being a concept artist.
Yeah.
I mean, even Ralph McQuarrie, and George, all that. Like, of course, they're referencing. Those are like some of the most like original designs. But there's an origin of where a lot of those designs where that came from. Like obviously Darth Vader and samurai look, and Nazi looks, and yeah. But they took something that was real, that has an origin, and they made it something totally unique.
Yeah, Rembrandt, Rubens.
Yeah.
Da Vinci.
Yeah.
All of those.
All the
illustrated references.
Yeah,
their reference was real life,
Yeah. And then Norman Rockwell, Dean Cornwell, all the American illustrators. Like, you think they're just making up these paintings out of their head? No, they're literally like taking photos of themselves or getting models and dressing them up. And I wish we had the luxury to do that, for every single painting.
Let's Google image.
I know.
Cool. I'll go through maybe one more question because I don't want to hold you up too much. I know you're tired and everything. So, do you use 3D in your paintings? Let's end with that one.
Okay. I am a beginner in 3D. I'm learning. I know some ZBrush and I know Modo, but I still totally consider myself a beginner. I've used it in my paintings here and there, but it's still like this one. Here's an example. Where I actually used ZBrush, but it's one out of 1,000 pieces that I did.
Yeah.
So
it's looking cool though. It's pretty good.
Oh, thanks. That was way back in Thor: The Dark World, but yeah. So mainly, I'm a painter. I love, and I think it's just I'm learning 3D just because you kind of have to. That's the direction the industry is going. But at the end of the day, I consider myself more of a painter. I love to paint. So I think even if I do 3D, I'm still going to be like painting. Yeah. I doubt I'll ever just fully become like a 3D artist, but
it's always going to be a mix. I mean, obviously, as technology moves forwards, and come on, 8 years, 10 years ago, there was no ZBrush. So
yeah.
Where we at right now, it's kind of crazy how software has progressed. I remember, you probably never used V-Ray before, I would assume, but I remember when I first encountered working with V-Ray, for instance, you would have to be a mathematician to understand how to use that software. Today, you just install it and you press render. You don't even you don't give a fuck about settings. At this point, you just press render and it renders. It automatically finds the right settings for your scene. It's kind of crazy how it's progressing, and it's crazy. I'll be dropping some Ghost in the Shell stuff once the movie's out, and once that happens, I'll be probably talking a little bit of how those things were made.
But
there were moments where I did something and I've sent that stuff to the production, and then a week later I saw something and I was like, oh my god, that's so crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy experience to work on that movie. I've enjoyed the shit out of it. I don't know how the movie's gonna turn out. Obviously,
no. I hope it's good.
I hope it too. I had a lot of time working with Rupert. Rupert is great at visuals. In my opinion, he's one of those directors that are very visual driven.
Oh yeah.
It's funny. I want to hear your opinion. Maybe we'll end up at this topic. There's certain directors that you work with, and like I think maybe once you work with those directors, you kind of get rid of the prejudices, and when you like, oh, this director is directing this movie, but he did that shitty fucking bad CGI shit before,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh my god, this is gonna be a flop. um, but one thing I've realized, if a lot of people I think have seen Entourage, the TV series. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about the movie.
Yeah.
Uh, a lot of how Hollywood works is like favors,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Who you
and
know? It's always who you know.
yeah, and some of the movies are just sort of like, if you make that movie, then you can make the stuff that you always wanted to make, but you have to make a movie about the fucking
Oh yeah.
trolls and pieces of
Yeah.
shit, you know.
Yeah. 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 You get to do what
um,
you want to do.
have you experienced working with directors like that, where it's just like, oh, I'm not sure, but then like you actually meet with them? I would say James would be kind of person like that, right?
You know
If
what?
you would just judge him from the Scooby Doo, you'll be like, fuck.
You know what? And I think a lot of our films, even starting with Robert Downey Jr., the actors, like when they hired him,
Hmm.
it's controversial.
Yeah.
I think when they because he's risky at that. He's a great actor, but he was that. He struggled with drugs and all that kind of stuff, so he kind of fell out of the good graces of Hollywood.
Right.
So hiring him to be like the first actor in the Marvel Studios film was
Almost
very risky.
sounds like
You know?
suicide, isn't it?
Yeah, and then they got John Favreau, who's like, he never did a big blockbuster film. He did that Zathura, I think, um, and then Swingers, of course, and then look at eventually they went for Avengers, like their whole tentpole film that they're culminating to
Hmm.
this huge, joining all the franchises, and they got Joss Whedon, who I'm a huge Joss Whedon fan because I love Buffy and Firefly.
Hmm.
But he was a controversial choice as well because he even he's not a universally loved or successful like even a TV creator or director because a lot of his shows got canceled prematurely. The only film he really did was what's it called? Serenity.
Yeah.
Um,
Which was
so no,
okay.
I liked it, but again, to do like Avengers, like that's
Yeah.
it's not he's not basically at the time he's not proven that it's not a surefire like that this is going to be a successful movie.
Yeah.
Um, and then even down to the Russo brothers, like what a strange pick. Like what did they do before that? They did the Community. They were directors on the TV show Community, and then they hired him.
What the fuck is Community?
Exactly. It's a comedy show, and they're gonna be doing Captain America: Winter Soldier. Like I remember, we're like, what? Like what the heck? And then look, it's like for a lot of people, it's their favorite Marvel film.
Yeah.
And then they did Civil War, and now they're doing Infinity War. It's like that's crazy. And then James Gunn, he did cool films, but they're like smaller films.
Hmm.
Slither and that kind of stuff. But yeah, look what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think actually a lot of the directors that I've worked with, and even you could say Taika Waititi, who's doing Thor Ragnarok, like he did, his films are great, but they're very much like indie films, right?
Hmm.
Like I don't know, have you seen his films like What We Do in Shadows and The Hunt for Wilder People?
No.
But they're really good and they're really like critically acclaimed, but they're completely like more indie films,
Right, off the radar almost.
Yeah, and then for him, and they win awards like Sundance, that kind of stuff. But then for him, for them to hire him to do Thor Ragnarok, which is like a huge film, like whatever the budget is,
Yeah.
like $200 million, film budget. It's
Mhm.
like that in itself is like crazy,
And shit, I mean, you have to also consider there's writers, there's producers, there's
Yeah,
editors. Like
of
a lot of
course.
people don't even realize how much of editing can ruin or make the shitty film the best
Oh
it
yeah,
could
yeah.
ever. So there's just like so many pieces, and yeah, like honestly, I don't know. I hope it's gonna be a great film. Ghost in
Yep.
the Shell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I try to do, and kudos to Rupert because he just let me do it. You know, I tried to do the justice
Uh,
to the franchise, and he was totally up for it. I shouldn't talk more actually, but you know, wait for the film, and I don't know if you feel like you want to watch it, go watch it.
dude,
I'm
so
definitely
gonna
gonna
watch
watch
it.
it because
I
you
like the
know,
trailer. The trailer is awesome.
yeah, and you know, it's gonna be his film, pretty sure. I'm pretty sure, and um, yeah, we'll see. The only problem I see with those films like Ghost and you know Acura and whatnot, whenever you're remaking
Yeah, beloved
uh
films, anime films.
yeah, like icons, you're always
Yeah,
like so emotionally attached to it, where it's just like if that
yep,
was a completely unknown franchise, I can
yeah,
guarantee the reception would be
yeah,
completely different for better or worse, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So it's gonna.
It's
I'm
it's
curious.
it's definitely an uphill battle. Like, how do you? Because people love those films. So, like, how do you
Hmm.
top that? You know, I feel like the most you can do is at least be faithful to it, and people are like, okay, that was a
Yeah,
good adaptation. But it almost feels like impossible to be like that was better.
yeah.
You
We're
know?
what 2 months away from the premiere.
Oh,
I think
are you
so.
gonna? Do you get to go?
I don't know. Usually our department gets invited, but I haven't heard anything yet. So
That'd be
we'll
cool.
see. I don't know where they're gonna premiere either. So
Okay.
it's you know, it used to be that all the films would be premiered in L.A.
Yeah.
It's all over the world right now.
Oh, I see. I see. I see.
Some films get premiered in England, or London, or like Sydney. Like it's just
Uh,
so different depending on what film it is. You know.
yeah.
So yeah, for sure. Dude, awesome to have you on.
Yeah. Of course.
I was trying to get you. You're I know you're busy, and it's super fun to have you. I would love to have you back sometime in the future for sure.
Yeah.
Talk a little
Definitely.
more, and maybe find like some more interesting subjects too. But
Yep.
congrats on the new position. I guess it's not that new anymore. Over at Marvel,
Nice.
you guys are doing awesome. I mean, you know, Marvel films are very consistent in being good. You know, so
Yeah.
you guys are
That's-
doing amazing job there. And say hi to all the guys, obviously.
yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
And yeah,
Hopefully,
and
hopefully, I'll see you on the lot soon. You know, work on another Marvel film.
if I ever get there, I'll definitely stop by and we'll grab some coffee.
Awesome.
That's 100% sure.
Sounds.
Cool. All right, let's wrap it up, guys. Thanks for everyone who decided to show up and saw us live. And if you're watching this later, awesome. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing if you like what we were doing, or supporting the Patreon. The Patreon is patreon.com/artcafetv. If you like what we were doing, just feel free to support it. If you don't, then yeah, you don't have to. It's up to you guys. So, cool. That was a busy day.
I know you did two today.
Yeah, I did too. Next week is gonna be
How
another
are
one,
you
I think.
working and doing this? You're crazy.
I'm just trying. It's fun, you know. It's fun to have conversations with people, and especially like-minded or prolific people like you, where it's just like it's really interesting to hear those stories. You know, I've heard
Yeah.
some of them when we were going down to get a coffee and whatnot, but like it's a better platform to do that in more
Yeah.
open, like
Definitely.
it's almost like more open space. You know, obviously we cannot talk things that we sometimes used to talk about when grabbing a coffee because there's a
Yeah.
lot
Have
of
to
like
be
NDA
more
confidential
PC.
stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
But it's just fun to have those conversations as I like almost come back to some of the topics we used to talk about. Yeah, it's fun. I
Yep.
consider it as a good sort of catching up, getting to know people, and also sharing all that with everyone that is listening. Because like as you said, like when we were artists and we were trying to be an artist, none of that was available at all. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you know, and we have awesome listeners. We have awesome people listening to this. They're supporting that show. So why not give him back? So
Definitely. No,
cool.
that's great. Yeah. Thanks for
All right,
everyone who
dude.
listened, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Have a good night, dude, and Good rest of the week.
All right, talk to you later.
Yep. Cheers.
Bye.